Hello, welcome to History 102, Summer 2026 review video for Test 1. Let's dive in and knock this baby out. Question number 1 is going to be on Lecture 1, Reconstruction. Compare and contrast presidential Reconstruction and congressional Reconstruction. Okay. And so, in the OpenStax textbook, that is your textbook, it delineates the differences. In Lecture 1, I talk about that. And what you're doing is you're comparing and contrasting the political battle between Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Johnson on one side and Republicans in Congress on the other. Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Johnson had very different views about how to handle the 11 states that left the Union and formed the Confederacy. Well, actually, and that's actually the first issue. I said leave the Union. Abraham Lincoln, President Lincoln and President Johnson, they viewed secession as illegal. For President Lincoln, the South never left the Union. It was illegal. You couldn't leave the Union. And so, you know what I mean? So, you get it? You're going to view Reconstruction, or you're going to view the quote-unquote readmittance process very differently if you're like, well, they never really left. Secession was Abraham Lincoln made that argument. President Johnson made that argument. It's illegal. You can't leave the Union. Secession's illegal. And so Lincoln and Johnson's Reconstruction plan was pretty, from one point of view, pretty lenient. And so, versus congressional Republicans, the South definitely left the Union. So you lost the war. Not only did you leave the Union, then you got into a war and lost it. Okay, so you get it. And so you're going to see very different attitudes comparing it. And so for congressional Reconstruction, you'll look at Lincoln's 10% plan. You'll look at Andrew Johnson's pardoning of former Confederates in the summer of 1865. President Johnson in the summer of 1865 said, kind of told all the southern states, the 11 states of Confederacy, go and reconstitute your governments. We were welcome back. Let's kiss and make up. Congressional Republicans didn't want to kiss and make up. They're like, we're not kissing and making up. No. Right. So you'll definitely contrast that. What did Congress do Reconstruction? What did President do? Sometimes congressional Reconstruction, well, not sometimes. Traditionally, before the last maybe 30, 40 years, congressional Reconstruction used to be called radical Reconstruction. So when you're studying, you kind of look that up. Presidential Reconstruction, radical Reconstruction. Current day historiography doesn't like to call it radical Reconstruction because how radical is it really from our point of view? Current day 2026 ideas is that congressional Reconstruction wasn't that radical, I guess you could say. Or it didn't go far enough, kind of a thing, right? So previous generations of historians and culture argued that it was radical Reconstruction. The Northern Republicans went too far. The U.S. government went too far in enforcing Reconstruction, in enforcing black civil rights, in enforcing, laws that the North wanted to pass, And so, for generations, the idea was that if this is too radical. Northern Republicans in Congress and the U.S. government went too far. Whereas kind of our modern day, the current day historiography is that they didn't go far enough. So you can bring that up too if you want, like the switch in that debate. The 1960s is when the debate kind of started changing. And then the last probably 20 years, you kind of really see getting away from calling it radical Reconstruction. You can also mention who won. Mr. Bills, in the battle between Presidents Lincoln and Johnson and Congress over control of Reconstruction, was there a winner? Yeah, it's obvious. There should be an obvious there's an obvious winner in that battle. In the battle of how to control Reconstruction, if you've done your studying, and you can mention this, which side won, Lincoln Johnson or Congress, there is a clear winner, right? There is a clear winner. Okay. Would you like a clue? Would you like a hint? Congress tried to Congress, the House of Representatives in 1868 did what? Impeached Andrew Johnson, and the U.S. Senate in May of 1868, failed by one vote to remove him. So I mean, there's your hint. Okay. There's definitely a clear winner. There's definitely a clear winner in the battle for Reconstruction, right? So when you read that, so you can address that too. Is there a clear winner? And yeah, there's a massively clear winner. There's your hint. Congress came within one vote of removing Andrew Johnson. So, trace the development of segregation in the U.S. The person that gets a 5 on this question will mention the following things. Number 1, segregation did not begin immediately after the Civil War. Okay. The legal system of segregation that you and I know from popular history, that didn't begin until you start seeing in the 1880s and onward. Now, are there antecedents to segregation? Yes. The summer of 1865, fall of 1865, 66, black coats. So there is an antecedent. But when you discuss the legal system of segregation, laws, poll taxes, all the stuff you and I think we know from popular history, that's a later development. Okay. So that's kind of the first thing the student will deal with. You need to deal with about a decade difference. The Civil War, about a decade later to the end of Reconstruction. You do see some attempt at the incorporation or integration of black individuals in the South and even in the North into public life. Okay. You see some attempts at it. It's uneven, by the 1880s, you start to see kind of that change. The person that gets a 5 will mention this. You have to talk about Redeemer governments. You have to. If you don't talk about Redeemer governments, you didn't talk about the development of segregation. You just ranted. Okay. That's kind of another thing I'll bring up in a minute. But anyways, so you'll mention Redeemer governments. Okay. Talk about them, right? Southern white Democrats finally get back into power after Reconstruction. What's the first thing they do? They set up segregation. Okay. There are two goals of segregation. The person that gets a 5 will mention the 2 goals of segregation. Number 1, get rid of black voters. Number 2, get rid of damn Yankees, i.e. Republicans. Okay. I have to see those 2 things. If you say something vague and general like racism, I will not give you points for it. It's just saying racism and then moving on is intellectually lazy. You have to explain it. You have to discuss it. There are 2 goals to segregation. Well, 3, actually, sorry. 3 goals, I just thought of the 3rd. Anyways, there's 3 goals to segregate. Here, I'll tell you what, just mention 2 of the 3. You just gotta mention 2 of the 3. Anyways, get rid of black voters. 2, get rid of damn Yankees. 3 would be what? You need to secure your labor supply. And so that would be the 3rd. So you have to secure your labor supply. You had a concrete labor supply before the Civil War, right? African American slave labor. Well, you lost control of the labor supply when the Civil War ended, right? So the purpose of segregation is also you need to secure that labor supply. Can you make them legal slaves again? No. What do? You set up a legal system of segregation that's meant to what? Make sure that black people in the South are your labor. I mean, so that's the three. So I mentioned at least two of the three. Okay, you get it? And then do you see the difference? Just saying, racism, and move on. That doesn't explain anything. Okay, but what did I just do? You explain it. Before the Civil War, the South had a set, reliable labor supply. African American slave labor. They lost access to that labor at the Civil War. What are you trying to do after the Civil War? Secure a labor class. Or to put it crudely, you still want them to pick cotton. And so, you get it? So they're not slaves. You have to what? If you want to secure that labor supply, you have to set up a legal system that makes sure that your black labor, your African American labor, is the labor. All right, you got it. And so, I'll give you this quote to help you see the idea. The Negro Leagues or the Negro Leagues. Well, there are examples of African American or black ball players, before, in the 19th century, but we kind of know probably the history what. When segregation was really getting going in the 20th century, black ball players had to play in the Negro Leagues. They couldn't go play in the American White National League. So what do? You set up your own, black leagues, right? Negro Leagues. There's a 19th century, there are some black ball players that did play Major League Baseball in the 19th century. There were a few. And one of them had this quote. Baseball kept me out of the celery fields. Okay, that's the quote. Baseball kept me out of the celery fields. Okay. That's the point. You get it? Segregation was set up. Segregation is being set up to get rid of black voters, get rid of damn Yankees, i.e. Republicans, and Northern Republicans, and 3, secure a labor supply. What does Southern society want? They wanted that black baseball player to work in the celery fields. You get it? He wanted to play baseball. Baseball kept me out of the celery fields. The segregation wanted that black ball player to be the labor. Work in the celery fields. Go pick. Okay? That's the point. That's the point I'm trying to get across. You're trying to secure a labor supply. You no longer, with the ending of slavery, with the ending of legal slavery, you no longer have a reliable labor supply. Right? You get it? That African American laborer isn't bound to you somehow legally. They can go get whatever job they want. You gotta secure the labor. Okay, so that's the whole point of that. Anyway, you'll trace the development of segregation in the U.S. You talk about everything I just mentioned. You have to talk about the separation. Segregation develops later. There is some attempt early on to enforce black civil rights and integrate African Americans, North and South, into society. All right. What changes that? Redeemer governments. You have to talk about redeemer governments. If you do not mention redeemer governments, you're not talking about development segregation. And you do need to point out they're Southern white Democrats. I know most students in my classes are registered Democrats, and I know this makes you uncomfortable. And, well, anyway, I'm about to go off on a rant, but you have to name it. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, so trace the development segregation. Okay. What I do not want to see. Okay. What do I not want to see? You will not get a 5 for this. I do not want to see emotional rants, soliloquies, moralizing, declaration of, I think segregation is wrong. I don't want to see, I think slavery is wrong. Good for you. Congratulations. Okay. It's 2026. It's 2026. I know you think segregation's wrong. I mean, so it has to be an academic discussion, interpretation, analysis. You cannot be intellectually just saying racism and ranting on. That's intellectually lazy. You have to explain it academically. Okay, calling something racist and nothing else is not academic. It is not. It's intellectually lazy. You're not saying anything. Okay, you have to analyze, understand. You have to describe the Southern white Democrat point of view. I just did. Get rid of black voters. Get rid of black voters. Get rid of damn Yankees, Republicans, and secure a labor supply. You want them still picking the cotton. You want them working, right? This is not your, you can go, this is not for you to emote and moralize and rant about whatever. It has to be an academic discussion. Your analysis. I don't need to see, I think segregation is wrong. I know you think that. You're not saying anything. I mean, what's your next sentence going to be? The sun rises in the east and sets in the west? I mean, what do you want, a medal? You're stating the obvious. Yes, I know you don't like segregation. I know you're opposed to it. I mean, do you want a medal? I mean, it's like, I call it obvious opinion. It's obviously your opinion. Yes, I know you think that. I know you think slavery's wrong. I know you think segregation's wrong. I mean, what are you going to tell me next? Water is wet? Breaking news, water is wet. I mean, so I need this analysis of something deep, something philosophical, a point. Okay. You have to show some understanding of the past. Labeling something a name and moving on, you're not showing any understanding of the situation. You're just labeling it because you don't like it and moving on. So so there's that. But anyway. And I understand the irony of telling you not to rant, and I've done it at least twice here. But anyways. So, if I can market myself for a minute, if you want to see more, sign up for my fall classes. Anyways, I have 6 classes in the fall. Hurry up. 4 are already full. No, 3 are full. 3 are full. 3 are closed. Well, 2 are closed. 1's closed. Anyways, classes fill up fast. My classes fill up pretty fast. So, anyways, so there's that. So, don't miss the Mr. Bill show. Anyways, lecture 2, industrialization. Pick 3 captains of industry, discuss their contributions. So that's pretty straightforward. Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, Vanderbilt. We all know their names. I mean, Andrew, James J. Hill. The captains of industry that helped build America. Okay. So discuss them. What will quickly get you less than 5 is if you are overly partisan, overly Marxist, overly one-sided. Okay. It has to be a balanced discussion. Okay. It cannot be a Marxist rant on the evils of capitalism. Capitalism is an evil. Okay. And so it cannot be it can't be like with the segregation. I think workers were poorly treated. Once again, it's 2026. I know you think that. I mean, it is true. It is true that, everything that you expect as an employee today did not exist in the 19th century. That's factually accurate. So I know you think workers were poorly treated because, one, a lot of students you are indoctrinated with Marxism because the American public education system is Marxist. So I already know that. I know you think we're probably, because I know you have a Marxist education. Okay. The American public education system is Marxist. And so I know you think that. You know, and it is factually accurate. Yes. Everything that you today expect as an employee did not exist in the 19th century. So of course you're going to think workers were poorly treated. You get it? So once again, it has to be academic, analytical, say something. You know, I mean, I don't do Marxist diatribes of the evils of capitalism either. It has to be a balanced discussion. Okay. The good, the bad. Are there critiques of capitalism in these captains of industry? Yes, of course. Okay. But anyways, you have to demonstrate balance. If I read your paper and my first thought is a communist, I'm going to be like, anyways, it has to be balanced. Okay. And it's got to be deeper than workers were poorly treated and corporations are evil and all the rich people are evil. Rich people aren't by default evil. Poor people aren't by default pure and holy. Okay. Just because somebody's rich doesn't mean they're evil. Just because somebody's poor doesn't mean they're good. Okay. Your value as a human being has nothing to do with your bank account. That is false. Okay, that's what's false. Is your moral value and worth has nothing to do with your bank account. Rich people aren't evil just because they have a big bank account. Poor people aren't pure and holy just because they're poor. Okay, and yes, vice versa too. But that's kind of the problem with a lot of what I consider popular culture today is this default. Well, rich people are evil. Oh, why? They have more money than I do. I mean, it's baloney. Anyways, so it has to be a balanced discussion. This should not just be a Marxist communist diatribe, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I've spent way too much time on that. So, describe the gospel of success and the gospel of wealth. The gospel of success is what? The American dream, right? Be a good person. Be a good person. Work hard. Be a good person. One day, your ship will come in, and oh my gosh, you'll go on to fame and fortune, right? The rags to riches story, right? The American dream. Okay. 19th century America had that in their head heavily. You'll discuss that, right? What are the positives of that? What are the negatives of that, right? What are the pros and cons of it? The gospel of wealth, Andrew Carnegie, right? What should the wealthy do with their money? What should the wealthy never do with their money? Okay. And how do those reinforce each other? I will give you a hint. For my in-class students, I say this, so this will help you guys. If you have me in class, I'll give you this example. Okay. A generic factory owner. Let's say I'm Mr. Bills. I am the factory owner. You students are my employees in my factory. What do I want you to do? I want you to work for me in my factory. Okay. I am wealthy. I have money. I pay you a wage to work for me. Okay. So you guys are my students. Oh, sorry, no. You guys are my factory workers. Okay. If I started just handing out money to just the homeless person on the street, if I just started handing out money, and by the way, it's as much as the wages I pay you to work for me, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You get it? Okay. If you start the gospel of wealth, You start just handing out money to people on the street where they're not earning it. They're not earning it by working in Mr. Bill's factory. They're just being given the money, right? They're not living the gospel of success. They're not working hard. They're not being a good person somehow. Okay. And I know I made there's a philosophical point there that maybe people don't like, but the assumption is homeless people are good people, and that's not what I'm saying. But from the wealthy point of view, is that there's something, from the 19th century point of view, there's something defective or wrong with being homeless. There's something, so what is it? Well, for 19th century Americans, what are they doing wrong in their life, right? And so, you get it? You're not living the gospel of success. You're not working hard. You're not being a good person. Okay? But if the factory owner, just start handing people money, what are you guys, my factory workers, going to start doing? You right? You'll go sit out on the street and just wait for me to hand you money. Why should I work for 12 hours? And the work day back then was 10 to 12 hours. Why should I work 10 to 12 hours a day, 10 hours a day, for the same amount of money that Mr. Bills gives the homeless guy on the street? I'll just go sit on the street. Right? So so the gospel of success and gospel how they reinforce each other. That's the example I used for my in-class students. The gospel of success and the gospel of wealth, they reinforce each other. Okay. And so I just told you how. I just told you how, so that'll help you. Analyze progressivism as a political ideology. I have a handout for you. There's reforms. One of your discussion questions was on it. Mr. Bills, your discussion questions, they're not relevant, are they? You guys had a discussion question on progressivism. Ding, 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 ding. There's some of your answer. You could almost argue for those that did a really good job, you could almost argue you did your answer. Now, you can't cut and paste it. I won't give you credit for that. But if you've already crafted some type of a response. Okay, so there you go. 4, describe how America mobilized for World War I. So your OpenStack text would talk about it. My lecture does somewhat. So you just kind of go over the different types of mobilizing. The draft. Anyways, I don't like calling them propaganda posters, but anyways, the posters. What's getting people motivated to participate? Food rationing, censorship. I'm anti-censorship. I'm big on censorship. So. What aspects of the 1920s come from or important to modern day America? Okay. What are some connections you can point out? The 20s had an economic boom based on new industries. Airplanes, cars, radios, electric appliances. What was the boom in the 90s? Internet. What's the current day boom? AI companies, right? So you can talk about that. Music, dance, civil rights, nativism, all kinds of stuff. Okay. Identify 3 new programs. That's pretty straightforward. I'll tell you right now, I tone it down during the summer, but I have a very different interpretation of Herbert Hoover, Franklin Roosevelt, the Depression and the New Deal than the consensus is. I disagree with the consensus view to a large extent. I don't really kind of tone that down during the summer. I don't really have to dig into that. So this question's a pretty straightforward. Just pick 3 New Deal programs. There's like a million of them, and just identify the pros and cons. So this is where you'll mess up. So the American public education, in the U.S. history classroom, in the American public education classroom, there are no cons to New Deal programs. Okay. That's what will be new to you. The student that does not get a 5 will be because they didn't discuss the cons. If you if you do this answer and if you start treating FDR and the New Deal like Jesus Christ coming and the Savior, that won't get you fives. It has to be balanced. There are definite cons to nearly all New Deal programs. Okay, there are issues. Okay. You're never told them because in the American public education system, you're supposed to leave the classroom loving FDR, hating Hoover, loving FDR, loving the New Deal. New Deal is pure and holy. Nothing ever bad ever happened. I mean, and all that. I disagree strongly with that interpretation. Okay. Identify 3 New Deal programs. They're pros and cons. If you only give the pros, you'll not get a 5. You have to discuss the cons. Okay. And that's going to be difficult for some of you because if you're so indoctrinated with the consensus point of view, you're going to have a hard time. Well, I can't think of any cons. Well, study. If you think there are no cons to New Deal programs, well, that's why you're taking my class, to study. Okay, you got it? You just study it. And on the page, I have some examples. Rise of totalitarianism. So in the PowerPoint presentation I have in the lecture 7 page, I go into great detail on it. Fascism and communism. This is my twist. My interpretive twist, what am I arguing to you? So, how you're normally taught fascism and communism, you're taught that it's a line, on this end is communism, on this end is fascism. Okay? So you're taught as a line. Okay? And they're opposite. They never touch. Okay? My argument is that is not completely accurate. The way I would argue it to you, Mr. Beals, what do you want us to think? What I want you to think is fascism and communism are 2 sides of the same coin. They're both totalitarian ideologies. They are not the opposite of each other. They're 2 sides of the same coin. Okay. In other words, they're a lot more. Fascism and communism are a lot more similar than you're led to believe. In the U.S. education classroom, because most of your teachers are left on the political spectrum, most of your teachers are Marxist, communist, socialist, democratic, socialist, whatever, some version of left. So they want you to think they're completely opposite. Okay? They want you to ignore anything else. And you have to show an understanding of other points of view. Okay? They're 2 sides of the same coin. That's what, in my class, that's what I'm teaching you. They're 2 sides of the same coin. They're both totalitarian. Okay. They're both bad. A lot of times you're taught fascism is bad, communism is good if it's done right. No. You should view communism the exact same way you view fascism. They are both bad. They're both totalitarian ideologies. Okay? They both reject liberty. They both reject freedom. They both reject basic human rights and liberties. They both reject them. Okay? They both reject classical liberalism of our founding fathers. Okay? So that's kind of the argument I'm making when you study is I'm arguing you should really see it more as 2 sides of the same coin. They're not the exact opposite. Now, what's the counter to that? Are there differences between fascist political ideology and communist political ideology? Of course. If they were the exact same thing, you wouldn't have 2 separate names. So that is true. There are philosophical differences, yes. Okay. That is true. There are philosophical differences, but the result of both is the same, totalitarian. Okay. And so, you've got to show that balance. You've got to show an understanding that they have a lot of similarities. Are there differences? Yes, of course. Otherwise they would be named different things. Okay. They are they have a lot of similarities. The biggest similarities, they both have the same result. They're totalitarian. Okay. I am extremely anti-totalitarian. I am anti-totalitarian. And so, and you're like, but Mr. Bills, you run your class like a totalitarian dictatorship. I understand. Anyways, so, I understand the irony. But anyway, so there's that. The last question is pretty straightforward. So in the PowerPoint presentation, I do a long discussion of the Holocaust and Japanese American internment. This is pretty straightforward. Well, in the fall and spring, I usually ask you to look up some videos, some websites. You can still do that. Actually, I probably should have had that in. If you just want to do this, you just want to pick a website for the Holocaust, one website for Japanese American internment, and talk about that. Now that I'm thinking about it, I wanted to have that question more than this one, but oh well. Give from the other one, and so again, okay. One reason why I kind of hesitate to do this question is I do not want to see the following. I think the Holocaust was wrong, and I think Japanese American internment was horrible. What do you want, Emmanuel? I mean, again, I know you live in 2026. I know you think the Holocaust was bad. I know you think Japanese American internment. You have to go deeper. You have to discuss. Okay. You have to discuss. Okay. I don't want to see labels. Labels are not an argument. Calling something racist is not an argument. You're just expressing an opinion. Okay. That's why I don't like it. Calling something racist or sexist or all these terms we use today, you're not explaining anything. You're not showing any understanding of the issues, understanding of any sides. You're just labeling it because you don't like what you're hearing. Calling something a name is not an argument. Okay? It is not an intellectual argument. You're just labeling it. You're just giving your opinion of what it is. Okay? That's why I don't like it. You're not saying anything. You're not. The only thing you're saying is, I don't like what I'm hearing. Like when I see it, I think Japanese American internment was racist. All that means to me is, you don't like that it happened. Okay. What is the problem with Japanese American internment? That's what you need to deal with. Right? And I'll give you a hint. Okay. Here's the problem. This is the problem for you people. This is the problem. The American public education system, you come out of the American public education system, you're taught that the government is good. The government is pure and holy. The government is wonderful. Okay. And so sometimes the Japanese American internment, you don't get taught the right lesson. Okay. You don't get taught the right lesson. And then the same thing with the Holocaust, but a government decided, okay, for the Japanese American internment, the government decided that 125,000 people could not live somewhere because the government was worried about something. Worried that they were a national security threat. Regardless if they were 5 years old, you look like the people were fighting, so even though you're 5, you have to move. Okay. In the Holocaust, and that's the thing, the Holocaust, like, we kind of lose sight. You're not supposed to think government is bad, so the lead gets buried. What is the lead on the Holocaust? What makes the Holocaust bad? A government decided to murder a portion of its population because it didn't like them. You got, when I talk to students, I think a lot of popular history buries the lead. buries the lead. We get all into the emotional stuff. We get into all the emotional stuff. The lead gets buried. What's the lead, people? That a government decided to murder part of its population. For what reason? It didn't like them. You get it? That's the okay. So you get it. 21st century. What can you learn? Okay, government today. Okay, what did government say in 2020? Don't leave your house. Don't go to church. You can go to the bar, strip clubs, and Walmart, but you can't go to church. You can't go to small businesses and other things. Okay, you get it? You get it? Totalitarian government. Okay. When you give government too much power, okay, there's a reason government should be limited. There's a reason government should be limited. John Locke is correct. John Locke's correct. People create government. Are people perfect, pure, and holy? No. People need restraint. Therefore, government needs restraint. You get it? Our government shouldn't be what it is today. It shouldn't be big, bureaucratic, bloated, corrupt, and fraudulent, most of it. Okay. Government needs to be restrained. Why? Because people create government and people need restraint. Okay. So that's kind of, for me, that's kind of that's my point. Like, for example, if I was a student, that would be my answer to this question. I guess is what I'm telling you. That would be my answer to that question. From my study of the Holocaust, the American, what do I, the 21st century American, get out of that? What I think you should get out of the Holocaust, the American internment is government needs restraint. Okay. With the Holocaust, the German government decided to murder part of its population because it didn't like them. Okay. Japanese American internment, the U.S. government decided that 125,000 people, it was okay for them to have their civil rights violated, and that they couldn't live somewhere for the simple fact that we don't trust you. Alright. That government needs restraint. Okay. If I can give you my personal opinion for a moment, that's the biggest issue with the whole coronavirus thing. Okay. Government needs restraint. Because when government is not restrained, they do things. All the lockdowns, all the hypocritical lockdowns, right? And it was hypocritical. I won't go into that rant, but anyways, government needs restraint. Okay, government needs restraint. And by the way, that's even for your own team. Even if you like the president or Congress, they're of idea that they still need restraint. Like, I disagree with the idea, like I think a lot of students are this way. A lot of students have the attitude, it's okay if my team does it. And I'm definitely opposed to that. It is not okay if your team does it. Well, if I can give my personal opinion for a minute, I see people complaining about President Trump, but they didn't say this. They didn't say a word with President Obama and the walking corpse that lived in the White House for 4 years. They didn't say a word. And so it's, there's a lot of students have the attitude, as long as they're on my team, it's okay. And so, and vice versa, if you were crying and whining about it, if you were crying and whining about it, during President Obama and then the walking corpse living in the White House for 4 years, it's not okay, it's not okay President Trump does it. So, I don't do I completely reject the idea it's okay if my team does it. I think a lot of students have that attitude. And so that's I quote unquote preach against that too. For like Israel, what's the propaganda? What am I supposed to get out of this? Is it's not okay if your team does it. You know, like I'll give you an example. I've had colleagues who've tried to justify Japanese American internment because they're Democrats and progressive and they worship the ground FDR walks on, and so they try to downplay Japanese American internment because their savior, their savior is Jesus Christ. It's Franklin Roosevelt. Their savior, Franklin Roosevelt, decided to violate the civil rights of 125,000 people. That's okay, Mr. Bills. No. It's okay because FDR is on my team. That's what it is. Anyways, so I reject that too. So that can be a lesson here too. Is it is bad. Even if you worship the ground FDR walks on, don't sit there and go, Chinese American intern was okay. It was okay. He's on my team, Mr. Bills. He's on my team. Anyways, it's still bad. Just because he's on your team doesn't mean it's okay to violate the civil rights of 120,000 people. Anyways, I mean, most of those Japanese people, American people, were citizens of the U.S. I could kind of understand the argument if they weren't citizens. I can kind of understand that, but these are U.S. citizens. You're violating their constitution, right? They are U.S. citizens. Okay. There are some non-citizen Japanese, that are part of this. And that's true. And I mean, if you want to split that hair, and I'm willing to entertain that argument, but most of them were U.S. citizens. So anyways, so that's kind of on this one. That's kind of what I want you to kind of get out of that. So anyways, so there you go. I hope this helps. I apologize if I went off track too much for you, but but just what I'm doing though is I'm giving you the full picture. Just take from it. Let's say you have the things the exact same way. Just I'm giving you some things to think about, and that should be on the test. So look at if I ran it a little too much, just look at it as I'm giving you another point of view to think about, and then you discuss it. And so I'm not, what I mean. So just take it in the right spirit. I'm not demanding you think the exact same way I do. I am asking you to think about it. I'm trying to puncture the intellectual bubble. That's kind of my goal as a teacher. I'm trying to most students are in this intellectual bubble when they come to me. And I'm trying to get you out of your intellectual bubble. There is a larger world out there. Okay? You are chained in Plato's cave. I'm trying to get you out. The American public education system has put you in Plato's cave. Okay? There's a much larger world out there. Okay? So I'm trying to get you out of Plato's cave. I'm trying to puncture that intellectual bubble a little bit. So I'm giving you different points of view. So that's why I kind of discussed everything. Anyways. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. If you want to meet with me, I mean, I do that all the time. One semester I had a student every Wednesday. It was a Monday-Wednesday class. He came to see me after class every Wednesday. We talked for an hour. And I was okay with it because I was like, well, as long as you're okay with me eating lunch while we talk. I ate lunch. He asked me questions about the lecture on the day. We talked. He was a cool guy. He moved to San Francisco. Anyways, I enjoyed it. It was fun. He was a good guy. It was fun to talk to. I'll do that for everyone. Come see me. I'm happy to talk to you. Anyways, good luck with everything. And I hope this video helped. If you feel like you need more help, just email me and I can go over some other stuff too. Have a great day. Bye.